All right, what's up, Winter Court? This is Stephen and Ben from Phantology with another Dresden review. We always say there's another Dresden review, and we're kind of sad here because it's not going to be too much longer before there is not another Dresden review, because now we're up to book 14, and we only have Skin Game. We've already covered Peace Talks, and then Battleground, obviously coming out in less than a month. So we're getting pretty close to where we're going to have to go back into waiting mode, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mentioned on Discord that I've like downed 3 of these books in the past week, and so I've kind of preemptively gotten the post-series depression that is so common that I think avid readers will understand, where you just have spent so much time with this character, and suddenly you're not going to be able to spend time with them for years to come. So, yeah, that's what I've been dealing with in my life recently. So.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. Which character are you most depressed about not spending time with? Just Harry? Or is there someone else maybe?
Yeah, I would say Harry. I mean, obviously Dresden is like the series is all told through his head. And so you kind of feel that you have kind of earned a new best friend that has a very witty sense of humor and a very sassy attitude. And you kind of, I'm sad that I'm going to not have that in my life anymore, so.
I mean, you can always do a reread. There are 17. There will be 17 books available, plus 2 collections of short stories.
I think, unfortunately, I do not have time in my life to prioritize a Dresden reread at this point.
Possibly before book 18, maybe we'll host a bit of a reread, but that's probably at least a year or 2 away.
Yeah, I mean, we hope that there's not another 4-year gap between.
I want to say it's been 5 years, but we really can't be critical of Butcher for that. He put out 2 books, and he also released the first of another series, The Aeronaut's Win-Loss, that he's writing. Yeah. So it's not anything bad. These are big books.
Yeah, I don't think I was trying to be critical. It was more just, if you're a fan of Dresden Files, you still had to wait that time. Sure. It's not like similar to Stormlight, how we have to wait, 2 to 3 years between books. And it's not like Sanderson pumps out a book every 6 months, it seems like. It's just not prioritizing what sometimes we wish he would prioritize.
Yeah, you expect a 3-year gap for Stormlights because Sanderson likes to do other things, and those are also super long books. I don't know how much time to expect before book 18. I mean, in the early Dresden years, it was a book a year. Now they're getting a little bit bigger. I think, Butcher just has a little more on his plate, so I would hope we have 18 in 2 to 3 years. We'll see. Yeah.
I would say that's pretty like a safe bet. You probably won't get your hopes let down too much if that's what you're counting on. So I think if I hope for a year, I'll probably be disappointed. But
yeah, this is a series that we feel confident will be finished and will continue to churn through. He's aiming for 23 books total. So we have 18, 19, 20. We have 6 more to go, if my math is right. Never do a math demo on a live stream. So hopefully that was correct.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you like Phantology, you can find more content, more Dresden reviews, and reviews of many other series online at www.phantologybooks.com. Interact with us on social media at PhantologyBooks. And join Discord. Our links are on social media, on the website, wherever. It's not too hard to find if you have the internet. And consider supporting on Patreon. And if you're looking to start an Audible account, we have a discount connection with Audible. So ask us about that.
Yeah. Yep.
And before we start this review, we'll just kind of echo, we are big fans of the series, but certainly not experts. We do have some experts on Discord that can maybe answer some more of these questions a little more in depth than we can. We're kind of here to just provide some entertainment and reactions. So for the most part, these details will be correct, but cannot 100% hold us to maybe everything we say there. There's quite a lot of minutia in these books, and we do read a lot.
Yeah, and I guess that we accidentally spoiled a small part of a future book when we were reviewing changes, so we apologize for that. I mean, stuff like that's going to happen. We're never going to spoil something big, but like Stephen's read the entire series, so it's hard to kind of keep things straight sometimes. And then now I'm even ahead of where we are recording now, so I might accidentally spoil some small details too.
But we're really going to try hard not to. I mean, we didn't spoil anything big from changes, so that's a win at least.
That is a win, yeah.
All right, so Cold Days, book 14. I look back at this one with probably with pretty high regards. I think this is definitely up there in the Dresden Files rankings. And I think it's funny because this book is such a direct callback to Summer Night. There's so many parallels here, and it's 10 books later, right? I think Summer Night is book number 4.
Want me to fact check that real fast?
I feel pretty confident in saying Summer Night is 4, and now we're up to 14. So 10 books later, we have a lot of similar beats, but characters have gone from one point to a pretty distant, they've made a lot of progress. And it's fun to see that, but also see some callbacks to the early parts of the series.
Yeah, so you're correct. It was the 4th book. So I'm just going to say that it was very confusing to me. After reading Summer Night way back then, I felt like I knew kind of Summer Fairy, but then like the rest of the time we've spent in winter, and it never really clicked with me like why that was going on. I just felt like I didn't have enough background on winter to really appreciate when I had spent all this time with summer. So that was kind of a disconnect going through the series. And then I feel like it took until this book to kind of resolve that in my head. And now I feel like I know Winter Court as well as I did Summer. So
sure. I mean, we've seen Mab and Maeve and Arctis Tour before, but as far as like the actual inner workings of the court,
yeah, inner workings, as well as like we were spending time with Mab and Maeve, but I didn't understand why we weren't spending as much time with like Lily, who we kind of saw her formation, and we spent a whole book kind of learning where like her origin story. And I just kind of thought that after developing that character out so much that we would spend more time with her instead of in winter.
Well, perhaps it was because Butcher was planning on making Harry the Winter Knight eventually, and so he was giving us some of summer back then and leaving winter kind of open to exploration here.
Yeah, no, I completely understand like why he did it in hindsight. I guess I was just throughout the series it was always kind of an open question in my mind why we weren't kind of spending more time in summer. So
in winter. And so finally we do get that. And so as we start the plot, we'll be talking through the plot now. So spoilers for the book. So after Harry quote unquote dies and changes and goes through everything in Ghost Story and comes back, he wakes up in Arctis Tor. Mab has been keeping him alive, but he's in really bad condition because he has been dead for so long. And so his first order of business is to kind of get back in shape. And he does this through some pretty cruel, in-depth physical therapy, some PT that I probably never want to go to. But he makes it through all right, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that this was a really fun part of the book where he kind of gives us a high-level view of all the times that Mab tried to kill him and kind of prepare her Winter Knight to face the struggles of the real world. And so I thought that was cool. I also, if we're going full spoilers, I like the fact that she was also preparing who she thought would be the next Winter Lady. So
right.
Yeah, that was a cool realization at the end.
Who's Sarissa, but at the beginning you don't really know exactly what is being prepared and who Sarissa is. You don't know that Sarissa and Maeve are sisters.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's cool that Mab has all of this invested in Harry, her Winter Knight. She can't just put some buffoon out there, right? Like she needs to make sure that she tests him, that he's strong enough to really represent her and the court. And I think that's cool because it makes it seem real believable. It really fleshes out the Winter Court as an entity that has to look out for itself and can't just rely on, oh, we got Harry Dresden now. Like, no, we need Harry Dresden Winter Night, not just any old Harry Dresden.
Yeah, you really get a sense when this book is in like at its climax that like Winter and Mab in particular has really been thinking 5 moves ahead on her chessboard. You know what I mean? So I appreciated that. What did you think about two standout scenes from this period of the book? One, Harry's birthday party was, I thought, one of the best. It's up there with Harry riding a T-Rex through Chicago. What did you think about it?
I don't think anything's quite at the T-Rex through Chicago moment for me. That was the top moment from Dresden Files from what I've read so far.
Yeah, I guess I think I would agree with that. But in terms of thinking back to things, like just kind of picturing Harry walking into like this like winter and expecting to be attacked on all different sides from these magical creatures, and then just like everybody busting out happy birthday was hilarious to me. So you know,
and it's not like he doesn't end up fighting.
Yeah,
of course, the birthday party kind of goes on. Harry meets some VIPs like the Earl King, who he's seen a couple times now. And in Changes, one of my criticisms was like, I wish that rather than the random Earl King Goblin fight scene that Harry and Susan were involved in, I wish rather than that we could have had the White Court fight on camera. But now that we've seen the Earl King in Changes, maybe kind of like you were actually saying, Ben, like that scene was needed to foreshadow bringing the Earl King back here, as well as Kringle / Santa Claus, who's kind of a similar type of entity in the Winter Court.
Yeah, and I think that having all of these characters present for quote unquote the birthday indicates that it kind of reminds you who they are and that they're a part of this and that they might show up later in the book. So that was a cool way of doing that. So the other standout scene was when Harry kind of created his independence with Mab and said, I'll be your knight, but I'm going to have morals. And if you ask me to do something that's over the line, you're going to have me. Which
is something that this is a battle that he has with Mab more than just once. This is how Ghost Story ends as well. More than just once. This is how Ghost Story ends as well.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's important to see him establishing those boundaries right up front, though. You know what I mean? To really kind of get out ahead of it. So I enjoyed that.
And I guess quick correction, I don't want to make people believe that I think the Earl King and Santa Claus / Kringle are on the same side. I just mean that they're kind of similar. They play similar roles on different teams.
Right. Yeah. I got that.
Yeah. So anyway, this fight happens with this guy called the Red Cap, and this is over kind of Sarissa's honor a little bit. Harry still has the thing for a damsel in distress. He showcases some of his winter powers, and then after all of this, Mab sends Maeve away and orders Harry to kill her, and Harry doesn't really know why, and now we have also a ticking clock involved in this, so we're off again with another Dresden adventure. And it's and then after kind of a talk with Sarissa and a suppression of some sexual urges, Harry goes back to Chicago and begins to formulate a plan of attack here. So the first thing is we have to kill Maeve.
Yeah, so I guess, okay, before we jump too much further into this plot, I wanted to ask, and this could maybe come at the end too, let me know if you want to discuss this at the end, is after reading this book, I see why people didn't like Ghost Story as much, and thought that maybe I could see this book coming right after Changes. Because now we're coming out of Arctis Tour and kind of jumping right back into the action of where Changes left off. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Ghost Story was needed?
That's the criticism, right? Because it's almost like Butcher is going from the urban fantasy that we knew in the first 11 books to changing it to a more epic fantasy, still in an urban setting, but the plot is just getting bigger and bigger. But then Ghost Story was like this real zoomed in look at Harry's emotional state, and the conflict was not as large, but I think it still was needed for our characters. It was needed to kind of set the stage for the reset of the series, because without a lot of the resolution and internalization of some of these characters, I don't think we would have connected quite as strongly with everyone in Cold Days and Future. I think we needed at least the emotional aspect of Ghost Story.
That's fair. And I think it also does a lot to develop Molly's character, which is going to be important for the end of this book. I guess one kind of middle ground, we know that Dresden has started doing more, or not Dresden, Butcher has started doing more short stories kind of in the middle that they're optional to read. I haven't read any of them. Do you think do you think Ghost Story could have been a short story like that? Or do you think it was necessary, like, as, canon, you got to read it?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I would draw a line between a short story and canon. I mean, I think real hardcore fans would say you need to read the short stories as well, and I would actually really recommend doing that before you get into Peace Talks. I know you're already started Peace Talks, but I think some things will make more sense if you at least know what happens in the short stories. I'm going to try to go back and actually, sorry to admit, but I haven't actually read all of the short stories. So yeah. I need to go back and do that, maybe before Battleground, or at least after Battleground. But at least knowing what happens is important for those.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we can kind of jump back into the plot here. That was kind of one thing I was excited to talk about, though, like, because I really enjoyed Ghost Story when it came out. I was like, why would people criticize this book? After kind of jumping, I understand why. So
right. So Harry's plan begins, and the first thing he needs Bob the Skull, and he knows that Butters has Bob right now. So Harry and his assistant of sorts, Catchy, which is spelled S-I-T-H, so obviously there will be some Star Wars jokes, hop into a new car that kind of fits Harry's new Winter Knight persona. And Harry goes to Butters. He gets Bob. He's attacked by Andy, who is Butters' new hot werewolf girlfriend. But they have a standoff, and Harry leaves with Bob, confers with Bob, and tries to start making a plan. He's attacked by a new host of tiny fairies, kind of like Toot Toot, but these ones are led by a little fairy that Harry calls Captain Hook. And they, I believe, shoot him with a nail, right, which is going to be bad because obviously Faye cannot abide such an injury. But then Molly comes and scares them off, and then Molly starts to give Harry some info. So your thoughts on kind of how we begin? And most books begin this way when Harry gathers his friends, right, and gets info.
Yeah, I thought for one, kind of the anti-guard, the fairies that are suddenly against Harry, was a really cool touch, because all throughout this series, Harry has been kind of patting himself on the back about his ability to employ this guard of fairies to do his bidding, and how he always thinks that other wizards don't give them a chance at their own peril. And then
he's getting a little inflated in his role as the Za Lord, thinking he's maybe a little more than he is.
Yeah. And so suddenly he has this like turned around on him to great effect. They almost take him out, man. He was a goner at one point. If it wasn't,
and it's fun later too, because we get a little bit of a romance of sorts between Toot Toot and Captain Hook, who is actually a female fairy.
I'm just gonna say, I think Toot Toot is the most underrated part of Dresden Files. He was there in book 1, man. He's OG.
And he's always funny. I mean, one thing we can count on Dresden is some good humor like this.
Yeah. So I was a big fan of this. And the fact that it kind of keeps on popping up throughout the book and even starts to affect the plot a little bit was a really nice touch.
So Molly tells Harry that in addition to the Maeve thing, I mean, she doesn't know about this yet. Harry does actually clue her in on much more than he usually does. So this is some growth for Harry because he actually tells his friends the complete truth and wants to get their help. But Molly then also tells Harry that Demon Reach is going to explode soon and take like half the Midwest with it. So now we have an additional disaster that is impending. And as they go out to investigate Demon Reach, they meet up with Thomas, which is great because Thomas did not get enough screen time in Ghost Story, and him and Harry have some time to kind of reconcile and they hug it out a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that the meeting of Harry and Thomas was a really heartwarming scene where Thomas kind of knocks him around a little bit, almost like a big brother would, and then like they just hug it out. So that was cool. And I thought that it was a little interesting that Molly was the person that knew that Demon Reach was suddenly going to explode. It does kind of make sense in the fact that she's been training with Maeve, and so somehow Maeve would have more of an insight to that. I don't know. What do you think?
Molly is really stepping up here, right? She's kind of the new guard of Chicago now that Harry's gone.
Yeah, I mean, her and Butters, right?
Yeah. Yes, sorry to diss on your man Butters there. I mean, there's a whole cast of previously lesser powered people that are stepping up in Harry's absence, right?
Right.
And that's what we saw in Ghost Story. That's something that Ghost Story really provided.
Yeah. Did I say Molly wasn't being trained with Maeve, though, right? She was training with Harry's godmother. Is that right?
She was training with Leah in Ghost Story, yeah.
Okay, my bad. I guess I'll real-time fact check myself with that because she was not with Maeve at that. Yeah. But it's...
So,
yeah.
So once they get to the island, once they get to Demon Reach, the genus Loki, Harry's connection to Demon Reach explains that someone's doing a ritual of sorts to make the island explode, and also shows him that the island is really this high security prison full of the worst possible monsters. Like there are 6 different Naglashi, pronunciation maybe, but you know what I mean, from Small Favor? No, from Turncoat.
That was like the least of the evil entities that were there. And then, because it was like nearest the surface or whatever. And then like he explores all the tunnels and they're just like lined with.
Yeah, correct idea. That there are really powerful things that have been in prison here for a while. And this was set up by the original Merlin.
Yeah. And so I guess one thing is like, whenever you put all your eggs in one basket, literally, you are setting yourself up for a potential disaster, right? I mean, why would the original Merlin think that he only needs one of these prisons? Why wouldn't you like kind of disperse it? I mean, I know that, I don't know. It just kind of seems weird to me that like literally every single monster that's ever captured is sent to Demon Reach. And who's sending them there? Like, were all these monsters just like gathered up by the original Merlin? That's a little confusing to me.
I guess we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe we're still waiting for some answers there. Maybe you're kind of thinking to the Red Court disaster with their bloodline curse that went back on them a little bit with that thought of putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, it's kind of just like you're just inviting a prison break at that point, you know? But it was cool that Demon Reach, like the power that comes from Demon Reach is from all those evil entities. Like it wasn't the other way around, you know what I mean? Like Demon Reach wasn't powerful like until it was loaded up with all those people. I felt like was kind of one thing that I had backwards in my mind.
And now you understand a little bit more about some of the warnings from the gatekeeper back a few books ago about the island, and that there really is a lot more to Demon Reach than meets the eye.
Yep. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I feel like the gatekeeper, he was the one that had like beef with the island, right?
Right.
But like, I feel like they're kind of working towards the same goal. I mean, I know we haven't gotten to this point of the story where we've talked about what the gatekeeper does, but they're both working to keep bad stuff out, So what would their beef have been? I don't know.
There's a lot of sides that are kind of working towards keeping the outsiders out that have no problem fighting each other.
That's true. Yeah.
Also, another thing that the island tells him is about this parasite that's in Harry's head that will ultimately kill him if he doesn't find a way to remove it. And so he's got a little bit of a personal ticking time bomb as well. We don't really find out too much about this parasite in this book, at least, but we know it's going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah, I forget. I feel like the the island, he gives the island a name. What was the name? It was...
Well, he calls him Alfred.
Yeah. So Alfred tells him that they made a deal to keep the parasite in. I was kind of confused by that, and I'm still kind of confused by it. I don't know.
You'll see. You'll see what happens with the parasite later on.
Okay.
Actually, since you're in Peace Talks, you already know. You're pretending to be confused.
Well, no. But even knowing what happens, I'm still like, why would they need to make a deal with the island or deal with the... Like, it's not like they put that entity there. When I read this,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure other than just the connection with Harry that the island has.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We'll see. We might throw that one over to Discord and see if someone can help us out there. Anyway, the plot continues, and Harry goes back, and after some interactions with the Courts of Winter, he meets up with Vadarung at McAnally's, and Vadarung tells him about the ritual that's going to happen, kind of fills him in on the potential dangers here. And is this when they fight the outsider, or is that later on?
No, this is around the time that the outsider shows up at McAnally's.
Yeah, so then this outsider shows up and attacks Mac. Mac has some kind of connection to the outsider, but doesn't really tell Harry anything useful. I think they call him Sharkface. Harry likes to nickname the different enemies. I mean, if you go back to Shag and Nasty for the Nagalashi, now we have this outsider that looks a bit like a shark, and they repel it just barely. The bar takes heavy damage, and we start to get an idea that maybe these outsider things that we've seen before, but we haven't known too much about, like these things are maybe the big bad of the series.
Yeah. And so this is a cool scene because suddenly we have kind of this subplot with Mac and kind of like a new mystery as to find out who he is. The outsider refers to him as Watcher. And so, yeah, is that he was a former gatekeeper that resigned his post. I could be completely off on that. But that's my theory as to who Mac is.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we're still looking for this one. So after this, Catchy comes and reports to Lily, or reports to Harry that Lily wants to meet with him. Harry goes to this meeting with Lily. Maeve shows up. They start talking about this mental disease thing that is infecting all kinds of beings, humans, fairies, vampires, whatever, that is making them behave outside of normal. And there's some kind of plot going on here. And Maeve believes that Mab is infected. And if Harry doesn't kill Mab, then a lot of people die. So both Mab and Maeve are giving Harry a gun and pointing it at the other side.
Yeah. And this is interesting because, Maeve has Lily there to kind of vouch for her, right? And Harry is naturally inclined to trust Lily because, he saved her life and he basically gave her the summer night or summer lady mantle. So, he's pretty convinced right now that that Mab is crazy. Also, this is interesting because right after this, Karen comes in and rescues Harry. And I thought it was a little anticlimactic in the fact that this is like the first time all these characters are seeing Harry alive. Like he did it really good with Thomas, and it just kind of felt like Murphy deserved a similar scene, whereas she kind of just arrives and saves the day. I don't know. I was kind of like, oh, this is their big reunion scene. I guess that's what that is.
It kind of shows you how much more hardened Murphy has become in recent days, because Harry at one point kind of blows up on her a little bit. I think it's over the swords. She doesn't want to give them back. And she says something like, I've dealt with a lot of monsters recently. And she, even though it's Harry, she understands what the Winter Night Mantle really means. And I think the Winter Night Mantle is something I kind of struggle with a little bit, because at times it seems like, okay, this is way bad and it's controlling Harry and it's all he can do to, suppress all these terrible urges. But other times it's like Harry summons his will and is able to overcome the effects of the Winter Mantle. So that's something I kind of struggle with.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a plot device that Butcher put in there so that he could have something to fall back on whenever he needs it, is what it feels like to me. He does do a good job of saying, like, Harry needs to constantly be exercising to kind of keep it in check and stuff like that. So I feel like Harry has ordered his life around it to some degree that is convincing enough for me. But I agree that it's kind of this nefarious thing that you don't really know what to make of, because you have no experience to draw on with yourself as to what it would feel like.
It's kind of like, I think I remember hearing this from one of Sanderson's lectures. He talks about the advantages of having a hard magic system is when you need characters to get into a bad situation, all you have to do is say, oh, their magic ran out. They ran out of the ability to do the cool stuff, and now it's looking really bad for them. And it's kind of similar here. It's like, okay, when Harry needs to be in a bad situation, well, that magic is really causing him problems here, but other times he's able to control it more. And I mean, that's kind of what it takes to tell a story sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's believable here. I mean, I think the reason why he took on the Winters, the mantle is believable. I think that it's affected his life enough that we believe that it's a real issue for him.
And there's a moment where he just kind of says, like, forget you, Winter Court, I'm not gonna abide by all this. And the mantle leaves, and then he falls back into his broken, paralyzed body for a brief moment before the mantle comes back again, almost like Mab was telling him, like, stop messing with me. So you do get that, like, he does have to do it. He can't just avoid the mantle entirely.
Yeah, and you get the sense that it's not even really Mav doing it, or Maeve. It's just that's what it is. You know what I mean? It's like this this thing that exists outside of any one being.
It's this construct of magic that he's now bonded with.
Yeah.
So the plot goes on, and I'm kind of skipping around here, but one of the funner things is when they actually capture Captain Hook, and we talked about this, like they realize that Captain Hook's really a female fairy, and Toot Toot is very attracted to her. This is kind of during the same time that they start to make their plan to disrupt the impending ritual that's happening, and the crew is all together.
Yeah, so I guess one thing that we glossed over a ton was in this meeting with Mab and Harry and Lily, we learn about the contagion, right?
Well, that's a little bit later, actually. So Harry goes to his grave, and he summons Mother Winter. Actually, he has a conversation with Titania, the Summer Queen, as well. And Titania is the one that tells him that this infection has a name called Nemesis, and you're not supposed to say it because then it gets more powerful. So, sorry. But needing more information, Harry goes to his grave and summons Mother Winter and has a showdown there because Mother Winter isn't exactly pleased to be summoned like this. And this is a direct callback to Summer Night Book 4, right? Because a very similar type thing happens with the Mother Winter and Summer And then this is when Harry gets shown the gates, the outer gates that are under siege from the outsiders, and he learns that the role of Winter and what Mab is doing is protecting the human world from the outsiders. The summer then is meant to protect the humans from Mab, and then the gatekeeper is there as well, and you learn what the gatekeeper, like that name actually has some significance because he's the one keeping the gate along with the Winter court.
Mm-hmm. And something with his eye being made out of the same metal as the gate, and
right.
The fact that like there's just like innumerable hosts that are constantly barraging this gate and going to war continually, and so suddenly you have this massive conflict that is continually going on in the background that previously we knew nothing about. So it definitely, it doesn't change the series in the fact that we still follow the same characters and stuff, but we definitely have a new thing that's in the back of the whole time.
So let me ask you this, because I know that when I first read it, this is something I kind of struggled with, but we have this new thing called Nemesis, and apparently this has been infecting the minds of villains throughout the entire series over the years. And Harry goes as far to say, like, oh yeah, thinking back to a lot of things that happened, in the first books with Krabos, for example. Oh, that was Nemesis driving that. How believable is that to you? Or do you think there's a chance that Butcher retconned that and said, well, those first few books, those were fun at the time. Maybe I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but now that I've got this new thing, I can like throw that in and say that was behind the series. Because that's a thought that I've had, and I'm not exactly sure where I land on that. There's probably some actual quotes from Butcher on this topic.
Yeah, so I'm not going to speculate too much about Butcher, but I think that, so I was listening to one of Sanderson's live streams this week, and somebody asked him how he planned out the entire Cosmere, and he, with all the foreshadowing and everything, and he mentioned that he would put stuff in and make a note as to like kind of its purpose, but not have it super like thought out. And so then when he got later on, he was able to kind of retroactively say that this is what happened. And I think that Butcher from a very early point in the series realized that he was going to come up with something to explain all of this. Because I remember in the first few books, he would always end by saying, there's still some pieces that don't fit together. There's got to be something behind this. I don't think he had if I'm just speculating for Butcher, I don't think he had a name for it. I don't think he necessarily knew how it was all going to fit together. And honestly, it feels like he still might not know. He just like decided to stick a name to it, and make it.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that when authors start these epic series, they need to have every single detail ironed out. I think that's a great point, that maybe they just have a few things and they say, here is, I know that I want this to be explained in the future, and here's some loose ends that are going to fit into it, but maybe we don't have everything planned out yet, and it would really be impossible to have that, right? You'd have to be you'd have to have incredible levels of foresight in order to actually write a series in that way.
Yeah. So I would say I'm going to give him a pass on this. I feel like he laid enough groundwork in the first few books by just throwing out those little bits of there's got to be some bigger picture here that we're not all seeing to make this super believable. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that, even if the first few were retcons, like I don't believe that they were, but like even if they were, I don't think it's terrible that the beginning of the series went in a different direction than we're at now, right? That's why we had changes in order to recontextualize everything. And at least now we're calling back to those beginning things and saying, there's been something going on. It makes things seem a lot more serious. It makes, the mystery, the Black Council and the outsiders, it just makes it seem all that more big and encompassing. And I love it.
Yeah. And what about the gatekeeper? Do you think, I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Because we had a name for the gatekeeper, I don't know, pretty like a long time ago, right? So do you think that's one of those questions? He might have known that he wanted the gatekeeper to play a role later on, and then designed the scene with a gate in it and said, "Hey, this is the gatekeeper's role." You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know, the whole thing with the outsiders and the gate and the gatekeeper himself, I think he had that pretty well locked. I mean, he set up the outsider thing from the very beginning, going back to Harry's backstory. And we know there's something special about, like, it seems like there's something weird about, Harry is maybe somewhat of a chosen one, almost. We don't really have any details around that at this point, but it seems like there's something going on with him and the outsiders, maybe more so than others.
Right. Okay, so the other kind of bigger picture thing I wanted to ask you about here, what do you think about like the role of like time manipulation that's played in this book so far? Because I was getting ready for a lot of time manipulation, and then it just didn't pan out like that. Like it just seemed like it was set up to be used, and then it wasn't as much. And that kind of
you thought the gatekeeper was going to do more with some temporal magic, or?
Well, I mean, one, it's kind of set up that the gatekeeper knows a lot more about temporal magic from a previous book where he references his ability to do that. But also, I think Alfred kind of explains that the attack on the island is going to be taking place from multiple points in time, almost, and that's what makes the attack so powerful. And so that was kind of weird to me that it didn't really feel like that.
We also talk about how the prison was formed in at least 4 or 5 dimensions.
Right.
And so probably something to do with time there. We could see that coming in the future. Maybe there's some kind of callback to the original Merlin, the formation of the prison. I mean, look, if you show us a prison and say there's a bunch of bad things in the prison, we can probably assume that the bad things will come out of the prison at some point, especially when we know we're going to an Armageddon type event. So yeah, I fully expect Demon Reach to literally explode. They're able to stave off the disaster in this book, but I think it's happening eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of weird because this book had those stakes there, but then it ended up almost just like as a feud between Mab and Maeve. And that was like the big climactic scene. And it was just like Maeve wanted to get revenge on Mab, and it almost seemed like the island was just kind of there to help that. I don't know.
So it serves as the backdrop a little bit. I mean, the fight with the outsiders is very real here, but I would say it's almost a prequel to what we're probably going to see in the future. So this is set up with the outsiders. We need this. We can't just throw this all into the book when it eventually happens. So I like it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we've jumped around a lot here.
Yeah, let's jump further. So we're now ready. Let's send everyone off to the island. We're going to start the big fight. And Harry's now met up. I think he meets up with Mouse again. That we can't gloss over that. That was a beautiful, heartwarming reunion. Harry's being tracked after being hit by a dart that keeps on spilling his blood across Chicago. And he's not sure exactly who to trust, but pretty much everyone that we've talked to thus far is going to head out. Harry gets a new duster from Molly, and now the wild hunt is happening as we go off on the boat because it's Halloween. And we've seen this before in Deadbeat. And this was the mistake that I made in Changes because I said that Kringle / Batarang was involved in the wild hunt, but he wasn't until this book. So this scene with Harry and Murphy on the motorcycle fighting the Earl King and Kringle on the wild hunt and joining the hunt even, I think this is my favorite scene of the book.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, picturing Harry and Murphy on the motorcycle riding across Lake Michigan, it just, again, this is like peak Dresden right now. And kind of commandeering the wild hunt, even though we find out later that the Earl King kind of meant for him to do this, it was still it was a great scene. Yeah.
Yeah. So Harry defeats the Earl King. Well, not defeats, but he's able to show his worthiness of joining a little bit, enough to join the hunt. And like, yeah, the motorcycle flies across like Michigan before the battle with the outsiders are joined. Harry and Murphy kiss a la Star Wars, like, kiss for luck type of thing before we go off into the fight. Butcher must be a massive Star Wars fan. There's so many references.
I've like noticed that he kind of picks a pop culture thing and references it each book. Like sometimes it's Lord of the Rings, sometimes it's Star Wars. It just kind of, I feel like he kind of latches onto one thing every book. I've meant to bring it up before.
I mean, Star Wars is more than one book, though. He loves Star Wars. It's very obvious.
Yeah, same with Lord of the Rings. Like both of these books, you kind of
hard to have an urban fantasy hard to have a funny urban fantasy without making these types of references, and they're great.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I feel like honestly, whenever Harry's not on screen, so whenever he's not having like the worst weekend of his life, as someone on Discord pointed out, I feel like he is Butcher. Like he like that's who Butcher like kind of imagines the character to be. Like Harry always talks about how he sits down and reads for hours on end, and you know what I mean? Like all these off-camera moments for Harry, I feel like Butcher's just like, okay, this is me now.
And I know Butcher has a sweet dog and kind of lives out in the woods, and I mean, not total isolation, but he doesn't live in a city per se, but he enjoys his private time.
Yeah, and so I also there's a dedication at the beginning of Peace Talks on the audiobook. I'm sure it's in the real book too, that referenced, I think it was his dog. I'm not sure, but he dedicated something to, and it sounded like it was an animal name. I'm sure it wasn't a person name. So,
all right, we'll have to check that. Speaking of Star Wars references, no spoilers, but how about the awesome reference in Skin Game towards the end?
What? I forget what this reference is.
Involving a weapon?
Oh yeah, sure. That wasn't really a reference. That was okay.
That's fair. What a reference is, man. All right, we'll cover that in our next review. Okay, so now the fight happens, the climactic fight. This is a good one. So the majority of the fight is really kind of back into the summer and winter feud. And long story short, after some misunderstandings and manipulations, Lily is killed by Maeve, right? It is Maeve that pulls the trigger. And the summer mantle falls to Sarissa, who is really Maeve's sister. And Mab was actually grooming Sarissa to take Maeve's place. Instead, she goes to Summer. And then Maeve is killed by Murphy, and her vessel falls to another nearby, or not her vessel, but her mantle falls to another nearby and ready and willing, maybe not necessarily willing, but anyway, groomed at least of sorts. Another vessel, this is going to be Molly, right? So Molly becomes the Winter Lady. And this is the real climax of the book. I mean, we're able to fight off the outsiders with the assistance of the hunt, but the real reveal of this one was this passing of the mantles. Yeah.
And so I guess along with that, the reveal was that it was actually Maeve that had been infected by Nemesis.
Don't say the name.
Sorry, I feel like you
Voldemort.
Voldemort, yeah. We say his name here. So yeah, so that was crazy. And I feel like one thing that really worked in this book was how Butcher has set up the fact that people from Fae can't lie. Like they just can't. It's not in their nature to. That's been the thing the whole series. And so he really uses that to his advantage here to make Mab be really believable and have her convince so many people because she quote unquote can't lie. You know what I mean? So that was a big reveal, and you can kind of go back there and say, oh man, they were just like all the little lies that she told that, that got her to this point.
Yeah, shout out Black Aja and false dress colors. Wheel of Time deep cut for those fans.
You know, it's funny because you really recognize that there's only so many things that you can do in a fantasy book. You know what I mean? You kind of come to an end where you've seen most of it, but they're all just applied a little bit differently.
Yeah, and that's the beauty. I mean, we'd like to see stories that use kind of the same beats, but in totally different ways. That's why Dresden's often awesome, because it takes these same types of ideas and applies it to a totally different structure.
So yeah, it was a pretty crazy scene where people are getting shot left and right. Like Lily dies. That's pretty crazy. I feel like that's one of the worst of the best things here is that after like Summer Night, we didn't really see Lily again. We saw Fix a few times, and I think we did see Lily, but gosh, after devoting a whole book to her, I feel like she should have been more present here, more present throughout the series. So that was kind of sad that she died.
Yeah, she seems like someone who maybe was used a little bit and was never quite like on the same level as some of these bigger players, and unfortunately paid the price.
Yeah. Yep. And so I thought it was like I kind of had my mouth hanging open throughout this final scene where everybody was getting knocked off. So I thought it was done really well.
It was a good one, and now we have this big question of, okay, what's going to happen with Molly now? We know how hard it was for Harry with the Winter Knight. Now Molly is the Winter Lady. What does this mean for her? Also, what does this mean for their relationship as two high-profile members of the Winter Court now?
Yeah, exactly. So the one thing is you kind of get whiplash here with Molly's character, right? Like in Ghost Stories, she's like this semi-insane vigilante, right? And then
she's the ragged lady there.
Yeah, and then next minute she's like, okay, like she has her head on straight. She's able to function pretty well. You know, she's taking lessons from Leah and she's doing good. And then like next minute she's the Winter Lady. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, she goes through the ringer. I mean, most characters do. Harry certainly does.
Well, yeah, but I feel like those three characters are almost completely different characters. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Just the ups, the highs and lows that she's going through.
Yeah. Right. And I don't know. I kind of don't love the fact that was done to her character because it rewrote the character a little bit too much for me. So.
But I think that's what he's doing in these intro books to the second half of the series, is he is kind of taking the characters that we know and rewriting them a little bit, getting ready for the big thing that's going to happen in the epic fantasy half of Dresden.
That's fair. Okay, so that's the worst and best.
Yeah, so that's a wrap for the book. There are a few outstanding mysteries. We want to know what the parasite is in Harry's head. Obviously, the whole nemesis. Sorry, I said the name again. That thing is going to be a problem. The Black Council continues to be a looming thing, and we're wondering, really the thing for me is like, I'm wondering how does the Black Council fit in with Nemesis and the Outsiders? Like, well, what's all the connection? We also know the Fomor continue to be a real world, like a problem we have to deal with immediately that is threatening Chicago, and that is going to kind of drive some of the plot of the future books. I think all of these things will. So my worst of the best, the moment from this book that I thought was great, but maybe could have been better. I'm going to kind of go back to the Molly thing. I think it's starting to get a little weird with the relationship between Harry and Molly. Like there's always kind of this sexual energy, but at the same time, Harry's like, no, we're not going to go there because it's weird and you're my best friend, one of my best friend's daughters, and you're also way younger, but now they're both members of the Winter Court and they kind of both have this, sexual magical energy attached to them. But Harry's also got a burgeoning relationship with Murphy that's always kind of rocky. I just don't understand why we need to have the will they, won't they with Molly when I would really be shocked if they ever do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I like the will they won't they's when you think it's inevitable that they will,
or that you're rooting for them to. You're not really
you're rooting for it. Yeah. There is a contingent of the fandom that's like, yeah, Harry, Molly, we totally ship them.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been Team Murphy, so a 2 foot height differential is kind of weird to think about, but luckily you don't have to really see that all the time. You just read about how awesome they are together.
So both great characters. I just think the will they won't they is like a little weird. I don't care for it. Not enough with this one.
Yeah.
All right. What's yours?
That's my perspective. So mine is Red Hat. He just like seemed like such a weird D-list villain that had such a big, like, we kind of glanced over this part of the plot when we were going through it, but like when he like lured them, like he had helped kidnap like everybody that Harry held dear and then plunged them all into the sea, and Harry was forced to like use his ice magic to freeze the entire area to like raise them up to prevent them from drowning. So that's an awesome scene. I really enjoyed that scene. And it showed his new magic, which I thought was a really good part of the book. But the fact that it was like Red Hat that got him there, and then also like the fact that he just like blew a little dart into his leg so that it would bleed a little bit so that the Wild Hunt could track him, I think was the end goal to that.
Right.
Just weird. Like I was expecting like Harry's leg to fall off or something like that. You know, some crazy thing to happen from the dart. It was just so that Harry would bleed so that other people could track him. Who ended up saving.
So it was like this Red Hat guy kind of drove the plot along, but we already had a lot higher tier of enemies that could have driven the plot along a little bit more. So why do we need him?
Right. And Harry like defeated him so handily at the start, you know, which is fine if you're like trying to set up a villain where like you've wounded his ego so bad that he makes it his life ambition to hunt you down and kill you. But like that didn't really happen. It was just, I don't know. The best part was the scene that was able to take place with Harry showing off his awesome winter magic. And the worst part was that it's just this weird D-list villain that we might not ever see again that got him there.
Yeah, that's fair. But overall, I think we're both really high on Cold Days.
Yeah.
Really, really exciting stuff. Great character work. We continue to see an evolution of where things are going. And this is one, I mean, I plowed through this one. I read the first 15 in one big chunk, and then I've kind of gone back here and there. And I remember after Cold Days, I was so hyped because Harry's back alive. He's doing cool stuff again. He's got new magic. Molly has a new role. A lot of cool things.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to another Phantology episode. If you like what we're doing, check us out on a variety of ways. You can find us on social media at Phantology Books, online at www.phantologybooks.com. Join Discord, please, and chat us up and let us know what series you'd like us to review. Where are we going to go after Dresden?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Let's do some fans. Yeah, let's have you tell us what you'd like us to review, and we will consider that. And consider Patreon. We have some tiers there. Any support that we get from patrons goes directly back into the podcast to help us produce these episodes quicker and with as much quality as we are able to do on a complete side hustle podcast that is just for fun. So thanks for listening. Hope you had fun with this one. See you later.